Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel, and I'm joined, as always, with my scenario reviews by SuperFang99. And we haven't done this in a little while, so why don't you reintroduce yourself?
Hello, yeah, I'm SuperFing99. I have my own YouTube channel where I do some gameplay stuff, and I'm excited to be back talking about the Dream Eaters. Definitely a very interesting, if not very fun, campaign. So, yeah,
Yeah, and this one is, I kind of waited on this for a few weeks here while we've been on hiatus. This is actually coming out in a new box, a campaign format where all 8 scenarios will be in one box on June 28th. If you're watching this live, it's just in a few more weeks. So this campaign has been out since 2019, I believe. So it's also neat for us to revisit some of the mechanics and see how things hold up after a little while as well.
absolutely.
All right, so we're just going to go ahead and get started with our reviews. We generally like to take a look at all of the acts and agendas and kind of do a deep dive into what happens during the scenario, talking a little bit about kind of the interesting sticking points, maybe some things you can do on a replay. We expect that you haven't actually. This isn't actually your blind playthrough. You're watching us talk about it, so
Yeah,
play through the
spoilers ahead.
campaign first. There's so many spoilers. So yeah, we'll be just sort of reviewing all of the different portions of how the scenario goes, along with the encounter cards. And then at the end of our discussion, we will kind of wrap things up with a rating system where we kind of talk about some of our thoughts on major ways of talking about how good we think the scenario is in 4 different ways. We talk about replayability, we talk about fairness, balance, and what's the last one?
Experience.
Experience. Thank you. Okay, so we'll talk about those again and reintroduce you to them on the screen when we get there. But for now, I like to have Superfang take the lead and walk us through the scenario.
Yeah, sounds good. So, story-wise, we are entering the Dreamlands since there's been some weird things going on in Arkham. People are just like falling asleep and not being able to wake up again. At least I feel like that's the last thing I remember about reading the story because it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But yeah, we are entering the Dreamlands to try and investigate what is going on about why people can't wake up, and hopefully we will make it to the Dreamlands ourselves, and hopefully as well awake once again. Uh, to start, we are at the Gates of Sleep, as it were, and this campaign, we should talk about this now, I guess,
Yep.
is a little bit weird. It's one of the more unorthodox campaigns, just because there's kind of like two mini campaigns inside the one. And
Yes.
so,
So there's
yeah,
campaign A and campaign B, and campaign A is the group of investigators that go into the Dreamlands, and group
yes.
B stays behind, but they're all kind of in the same place at the beginning of the campaign.
Exactly.
St. Mary's Hospital, I think.
Yes, and so as we've entered the Dreamlands, we're going to be talking about the other scenarios after this. We're going to be interchanging them, most likely how you're going to be going through this campaign. Um, so yeah. Starting off with Beyond the Gates of Sleep. Coming in here, we have this very weird intro where we have a dream, and you get to have a little bit of a bonus based on your choice and who you are. Um, so each class is represented here, and all of the dreams are very, class relevant. So each class, if you choose that dream, you can just search your deck for that class card, a card in that class, and play it. You still need to pay its cost, but it's a free card at the very beginning, so it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a couple ones for the criminal and drifter dreams. I actually fairly rarely ever see these, but they seem pretty interesting. So you can do some criminal illicit stuff. The drifter dream, you can replace your basic weakness, which is interesting. But you do get a trauma. And I
Yeah.
think there's one. Yeah, good.
There's a bunch of other ones here. And yeah, it's based on the traits on your investigator card, which, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only time it's ever been referenced, other than maybe
Uh,
some other text like in the story about if you are a, whatever, a scholar or something, they might have some flavor text, but I think this is the only time mechanically it matters.
with one exception, near the end of the Circle Undone, you can make some
Ah,
choices on
that,
what you want to do to those the bad guys.
that's right. That's right. Okay, and we just reviewed that one this time. I should remember
Yes.
that. Okay, yeah.
And so yeah, so there's one for Hunter, there's one for Medic Resistant, Misconduct Scholar, Veteran, Wayfarer. There's also some neutral ones in case you don't want any of those and just want to start with extra cards or extra resources. All of
Hmm.
these are pretty good. So find
Yeah.
the one you like the most.
So if you're Charlie or Lola, I don't remember what their traits are, but I guess they only get neutral dreams otherwise.
Most likely. Although Charlie could be I don't know. is he
Hmm.
Miskatonic? No, definitely not.
No, I don't remember
Yeah.
what he is.
I think he's a politician or something. It's been a while.
Yeah, or Civic or something like
Yeah, that sounds right.
Stella is. Yeah,
Yeah.
but right, if you don't have a class because you're Lola, Charlie, or Susie,
Right.
you get a neutral dream, yeah, which is still good.
There you go. All right, moving on. We're going to start the scenario, and also more unorthodox things going on. This very much sets the tone. The beginning of this scenario is definitely one of the weirdest because it is almost literally on rails. So we're going to start with some encounter deck stuff, but there is no encounter deck at the very start. You just skip that phase. No encounter cards. Honestly, that would be awesome if you could do that some more game.
Yes, so your Mythos phase is just placing Doom, and it's so funny when you play this because it's like, oh, we just go back to our turns again.
Yes. I think honestly what it really showed me was like how much time you actually spend in the Mythos phase. You don't even realize it. You're like, oh god, I forgot I've been spending my whole time in the Mythos phase. When you actually skip it, you're like, oh, okay, I guess we're still going.
Yep, it's true. Now they did come back to this idea with Feast of Hemlock Vale, which was the newest campaign released, but
That is true.
it's weird that this is like a real scenario rather than those preludes.
That's true. All right. So starting off, we are starting off in the 70 steps of Lighter Slumber. And basically, there's some stuff about when you leave, you take a horror for each card in your hand in excess of 5, so you don't want to have too many cards. But there's a free trigger to just discard cards from your hand at any time you want. Yeah, all we got to do is get into the Cavern of Flame, which is this other location, and all that requires is us to get all the clues off the 70 steps.
Mm-hmm. One agenda, by the way.
Yeah, one agenda with a 19 Doom threshold. That's crazy. But it does have this force effect where when Doom is placed on the agenda during the Mythos phase, if anyone is at a steps location, which, spoiler, is only going to be during this beginning section, you place an additional Doom. So you want to get down the steps as fast as you can.
Yeah, it's an interesting mechanic to have additional pressure, and we'll talk about it again maybe when we get to the end of the scenario. But yeah, you're on the steps for a while, but one agenda is pretty unheard of until Edge of the Earth, I want to say, and Scarlet Keys does it maybe once or twice.
True. I feel like maybe there's an Innsmouth one agenda that I can't remember, but I legitimately don't know.
Yeah, there's quite a few like one act scenarios, but
that's true.
One agenda means that if you are a Doom investigator, go nuts.
Go nuts. Or maybe don't go so nuts that you just die immediately.
be careful, but also, you've got time to like put lots of Doom on your cards.
Exactly.
So instead of there being like pressure from enemies because there's no enemies, or encounter cards because there's no encounter cards, you're just basically trying to go as quickly as you can.
Correct. All right. As we head into the Cavern of Flame, oh my god, 9 Shroud. And at the end of the Mythos phase, each one in here takes a damage. But that will advance our act, which will put into play 2 little folk of the Dreamlands, Nosht and Kamata. And to represent also that we are delving deeper into the Dreamlands, we're going to add a skull. And you'll note that there are no skulls to start out with, but there's going to be, I think, 3 added in this scenario? I can't remember.
There will be 3, yeah, by the end of the scenario. All right, let's look at these guys.
Yeah, so we got Nosht, Priest of the Dreamlands. It's 2, 3, and 2. Dreamlands Warden Elite, aloof and retaliate. As an action, you can parlay with him, testing combat or agility 2. Prove that you are worthy to enter the Dreamlands. +1 per investigator difficulty, however. And if you succeed, you flip him over and resolve the text. And if you fail, he attacks everyone at his location. So don't fail.
Mm-hmm. I have a question
also,
for you. Yeah, so you can defeat him too. So I was going to ask, okay, I have not played this in 4-player before, but I always found this to be kind of strange that this scales in difficulty, given that it's just a one action regardless.
Right.
Like, I don't know if like a harder test means that, what are they expecting? Like everyone to commit a card or something? Is that what the idea is?
Or maybe it's like, oh, because at higher player counts you have more actions. It's like trying to incentivize you to just kill them instead, because that takes more actions to begin with. I don't know.
That's true. Yeah, and you can defeat him, but there's still only 3 health. It doesn't scale that way either.
Exactly. All right, that's Nosht. We have sorry, Red.
Yeah, no, let's look at the other one before we flip them over.
We have Kamata. They same thing, but with willpower or intellect, and he deals 1 damage instead of 1 horror.
Hmm.
And yeah, so we gotta talk to both because our act is we gotta make sure that neither of them are in play. Let's look at Noshed. So it's ultimately just flavor text. We add them to the victory display. However, there is very iconic descriptions about how your mind is the best weapon or something. Um,
Yep.
so there you go.
And if
Also,
you defeated him, it's exactly the same.
oh, there you go. And same thing with Commentaar. I don't even know what he says. He's like,
This is like what you're wearing, I think, right? Change your
oh, okay,
clothes.
yeah.
Yep.
You gotta prove that you don't have aphantasia, apparently. Alrighty, those are gone, and we can move on. Lose all their clues, and we put in some more locations. So we got the 700 steps, which is this one, of base of the steps, and the enchanted path location. And we just got to keep on going down. We add another skull at this point, so we have 2 in the back. We need to get to the enchanted path.
And that's all the way at the bottom, which you can't
Yep.
do until you get a bunch of clues on every location. Like you said, you're kind of on rails here.
Yes. So we go in here. It's kind of the same thing as the top one, but you take horror in excess of 3 cards. You need to get all the clues off to get to the base of the steps. Base of the steps has a check for the number of cards in your hand, and every point for each point you fail by, you have to either discard that card or take a horror. So basically, you're trying to lose all of your cards by the time you get to the base of the steps, trying to fall even deeper. And finally, get all the clues there to get to the enchanted path, and then the real scenario, quote unquote, can begin.
But only once everyone is here, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
You still can go here, but we'll look at it. But you don't advance until everyone makes it down. So it's always a little bit of a challenge to, or just maybe not a challenge, but a puzzle to kind of time how does everyone get to this location, which is not a steps location.
Yep.
At the same time, or more or less, that you don't leave someone behind and the steps, because then you get the extra doom from the agenda. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Shall we advance?
Let's do it. So as we advance, we're gonna get rid of everything else. So we're gonna lose all the clues. We're gonna add our 3rd skull. Remove the steps. Goodbye. And we're gonna put 6 enchanted woods locations. I believe there are 7 of them.
There are. This is the one and only time, I think, in the entire campaign, well, almost, where there's some amount of like randomization of locations.
That is true.
One of the few times. Yeah.
Remove the other one from the game. We're also going to set some stuff up, and our encounter deck is now fully formed, and we have a normal scenario to start off with. We need to get 5 per clues, and that's all we need to do. We need to come back to the enchanted path, though, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of clues here to get.
There are indeed.
There's one more thing that we'll take a look at when we flip this over.
Yeah. Connected to each enchanted woods.
2 shrouds, but increase a shroud for each unrevealed location, enchanted woods location in play. And there's this weird triple action.
Yes.
So we kind of glossed over earlier, but there was something about do not stray from the path that we were told.
Yes. And indeed, on our act card, if you do, quote unquote, stray from the path by leaving the enchanted woods, you will have to record that the dreamer strayed from the path. So I wonder what that does.
Yep. So if you don't want to go to any of these locations, you can sit here and spend many turns just placing clues.
Yes. So in theory, right, this takes 3 actions. So let's assume that that's 1 investigator's turn. You need 5 per investigator clues. So that means you need to spend a minimum of 5 rounds doing only this. Correct?
Correct.
And then you can get all the clues, and then you can win. Easy peasy.
Well, you still will be drawing encounter cards, including enemies that don't necessarily spawn here. So
that is true.
This is a weird thing. It's not something I've ever been tempted to try. I've read a lot of people who say, "Oh, I thought I was supposed to, stay on the path," and then they literally spent the next whatever number of rounds you just said trying to get all the clues, and it felt really bad.
Yeah,
how did your group do this when you first encountered it?
Well, we were like, no. I think we as many people understand it is it is a either it is a for some reason like a achievement that you could do, or it's a joke because I think that that's really more likely the outcome that it's like, well, of course we're not going to do this. Like the game wouldn't want us to do that, so we're just not going to do it.
Yeah, MJ I think has said that she's been surprised that people even tried to
Right.
stay on the path. So, to any of you who are watching and this happened to you, or you thought you were following the instructions, yeah, I mean, maybe they could have made it a little bit more obvious not to do that, but man, I don't know why you'd put out all these locations if you weren't supposed to go to them.
Exactly. I think part of it maybe is a lot of people like, you know, okay, you know what? I'm not even going to continue on that line of thought. I think more it is, uh, I think it's interesting to a lot of people where they usually see things like, oh, if you mark something on the thing, and that would indicate something changing.
Hmm.
Perhaps those affected by um, the being hunted thing from the Circle Undone. So maybe people are just curious as to be like, oh, okay, what happens if this actually is a thing? But it really doesn't do anything. So
Yeah. From time to time, you are instructed to write things in your campaign log that do nothing.
right,
And this is just another one of those, I believe.
yeah,
Okay.
sure,
So if you do want to actually play the game and run around and get clues, let's take a look at the locations.
yeah. Let's just start with one of these.
Mhm.
Let's do this one. Hey, it's the village of Zoogs. 3 shroud, 1 per clues. Victory 2.
Ooh.
So that's already something huge. A 3 shroud, 1 per clues location with a victory 2. Very interesting. Does have a forced effect after a Zoog enemy with Swarming X spawns here. We add an additional swarm card to it. Hey, we didn't talk about swarming.
No, we haven't seen those enemies yet. Maybe we can pull one
No,
out and talk about it right now.
let's do it. So I'm gonna pull this blah blah blah. This furtive Zoog.
Okay.
So it's a 3/1/1 spawn wherever it has prey. Retaliate swarming 1. So what swarming means is that when it enters play, the lead investigator technically, or is it, or who is it? Whoever drew them, I always forget.
It's whoever drew it. In this case, it would be, yeah, so it's, if it spawns here, then it's whoever drew the card.
Right. Whoever drew the card has to take cards from the top of their deck equal to their swarming number, place them face down underneath the Zoog as additional copies of the Zoog or whatever creature had swarming one. Had swarming in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And importantly, all of these creatures move as one. They engage as one, and they are exhausted / evaded as one as well. However, they each have their own separate health pools, and they each attack in the enemy phase. The important thing though is that the host creature, I think actually I don't even know what the actual name of it is.
Yep, it's the host.
The host creature, basically the host creature can't be defeated until all of its minions are defeated or whatever. That's just to indicate like, hey, keep the card around to indicate that all of these things are this one creature, right?
That's right. And
but
when you attack them,
yes, and when
there's
you
only
attack
one
them,
health here, you get to
correct,
spill over extra damage when you attack a
exactly.
swarm.
So they each have their individual health pools, but they kind of collectively have a health pool, kind of, in some ways. But we'll see later that some swarming enemies have more than 1 health, so that's gonna matter. If you only deal 3 damage to a 2 health swarm enemy, you can kill one of them and deal 1 damage left over, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some weird rule stuff given that they still count as separate enemies. So like Zoe gets extra resources. Yep.
Holy shit.
Taunt level 3 does something.
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's other things that just sort of, I don't want to say break, but just some interesting rules interactions. I believe Kaimani can. Does Kaimani get rid of all of them?
That is a great question. I legitimately don't know. I think. Oh, this is it. I think Kaimani can discard the host enemy, right?
And then they all
that
go away.
Makes all of them go away. I think that was the weird thing about Kaimani. Correct.
Yeah, because it's their ability discards, not defeats. Right. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Cool. So
that's
this particular location just makes the swarm a little bit bigger. That's all.
Yes. Yep. And usually that just means don't spawn them there if you have the choice. Alrighty. Moving on. Over here. Hey, it's the Great Stone Circle. One shroud will precludes victory 1 only. But when it's revealed, you spawn the Laboring Gug here.
That's the other victory
Aw.
point.
It is, yeah. Definitely a much harder one. Jesus, he's a 5/5/2 hunter. He cannot enter the enchanted path, so he is stuck here. But technically, and we'll see this later, some of these locations are connected to each other,
Mhm.
so those you can move between those.
Yeah, once
This
you
guy's
play
huge.
this one once, you know if I'm gonna poke around on my last action of the turn, maybe don't do that.
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely had the Laboring Gug shown up at an inopportune time. So pretty tough.
Yeah.
Luckily, only 2 evade, but
Mhm.
5 combat and 5 health is crazy.
And 3 damage is, I think, pretty much unheard of in a first scenario. That's crazy.
Definitely.
Okay,
Alrighty.
kill him.
Moving on. Hey, we have our first one. All right, so we have the Moon Tree, 3 shroud 1 precludes victory 2 as well. After you enter, you must either take 2 horror or lose all your remaining actions. So it's kind of one of these things from Where Doom Awaits from Dumbledore, where like, oh, do I want to save my actions to make sure I can kill the Gug, or if I don't, then I could maybe be a little fortunate and just lose my remaining actions. Or actually, I guess in this case you can't do that because if you have none left, right?
Hmm.
But so it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. There's a little bit of shades of that for sure. And hey, this
Yep.
one's connected to this one.
It is. So I usually like to move these
Move things
next to each
around.
other.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, moving on. Hey, perfect. We have the
Hmm.
Fungal Forest, 5 shroud, 1 precludes. Force, when your turn begins, if you are at this location, reveal a token. If it's one of those bad symbol ones, you take a damage and lose an action. That can be really annoying, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, victory 2, however.
Yeah, we'll talk about the VP at the end because it is interesting.
Yep. Also, the Lost Woods, 4 shroud, 1 per victory 2. Force, after you reveal this location, if you do not leave this location before the end of the next round, before the end of this round, place the Doom on the current agenda. Sometimes I just don't care because we have so much time to begin with.
Yep.
But that this could definitely happen. All
All
right.
right, one
Lastly,
last
for
one.
our 6. Whoa, Jesus. We have the Mystical Forest. As an additional cost for you to leave, you must choose and discard a card from your hand for each clue on this location. So get all the clues before you leave.
That's usually what I try to do in the first place. All right,
Yeah.
we've got a bunch of VP out here.
A lot of
And
VP.
potentially, let's see, we got
12.
12? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And there's potentially one more that we'll see in the encounter deck.
correct.
Last
Let's
location.
also look. Yes, exactly. Look at our. It's the Stone Trapdoor. Oh, this is the most thematic one.
Yep.
So 2 shroud 1 per victory 2. While you are investigating this location, it gets +1 shroud for each card in your hand. So pretty neat. But
Yeah, it's a
I
cool
like
one.
this one for other reasons.
Yes, we might see this card again.
Potentially.
Mhm.
Where does this go? Does this go here? Oh, interesting. Gets this one by itself. There we go.
Okay. So that's the scenario. It's just run around, get clues, and it's
Yep.
Interesting because of the enemies, I suppose, and some of these effects, but it's pretty basic.
Yep. Go around, get clues, don't die.
And you just kind of have to math out, can you get all the victory points? And in my experience, usually you can. There's
Yep.
not that many on the board. You only need 5 per, and there's usually like 2 extra or something, or 1 per extra.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So this is probably what you're gonna get. They're all 1 per, so
Yep.
you only
Yep.
need 5 of them.
Okay. Well, let's look at the resolutions or the encounter deck. What do we do first?
Let's do the encounter deck first.
Okay. So this again doesn't show up until you get to the steps. So
Yep. All right. Starting off with someone specific to this scenario with Ancient Zoog 3/3/3. It spawns at any Enchanted Woods location, unrevealed if able, has a loop. At the start of the enemy phase, if it's ready, add a swarm card to each swarming Zoog enemy in play. So basically what that means is if a swarming Zoog enemy spawns while this guy is already here, make sure to kill the swarming enemy or just kill this first and just to not add more swarm cards.
I kind of like the idea that it's gonna go to an unrevealed Enchanted Woods location to make you
Yep.
want to go kill him, and then you're like, "Whoops! I went into one of these ones where you wanted to actually leave or something."
Yep.
So it's a little bit of a
Exactly.
trick there.
Yep. And we have Lost in the Woods. It has Surge. Each investigator at an Enchanted Woods location tests 3 willpower. Each one who fails loses an action and takes a horror. Yikes.
Yeah, one of the very few cards that actually makes everyone test in a very first scenario,
That's true.
having
And
Surge is
also it
kind
has
of tough.
Surge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a Blunder, which lost in the wilds from the Forgotten Age, which has a very similar effect and a similar name.
There you go.
Also is a
Very
Blunder,
nice.
yeah.
All right, not bad.
All right. That's all the ones from this scenario and this scenario
Yeah.
alone, right?
Yep. All right. We got I think this is the Servants of Nyarlathotep. Is that Agents of Nyarlathotep? That's right. And starting up, we have the Crawling Mist 353. Prey, most cards in hand, Hunter, and Massive. Increase the difficulty for you to attack or attempt to evade the Crawling Mist by 1 for each card in your hand with an encounter card back. Yes, that's right. Hidden is back.
Yay!
Yay! And we'll go over those in a sec.
Mhm.
Ultimately, this is a free VP.
Yeah. I
This
mean, you
guy's
have to
so
deal
easy.
with them. It's massive, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty hard to avoid them in this
Yep.
scenario since the map is basically like kind of a hub and spokes, right?
Yep. Yeah. So kill him, kill it, and get a free VP. Pretty nice.
Yeah. I mean, at this point in the scenario, right? Like, you should have stuff in your hand to deal with this, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. The
Yeah,
hidden
we got
cards
our
to go with it.
3 hidden cards. The Law of Yuggoth, and there are 3 versions. We have Chaos, Discord, and Pandemonium. So each of them, as we said before, are hidden, and they secretly add them to your hand. Each of them restricts you in some way. So Chaos, you cannot play cards or trigger abilities on player cards with odd printed resource costs. So these ones are getting definitely more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The way to get rid of this one is as an action, you can discard a player card with an even printed resource cost from your hand and discard it. So definitely hating on the odd costs for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because like the way to get rid of it is to do the thing that you maybe your hand is full of odd printed resource cost cards, and you're like, okay, I can't do these things, but how do I get rid of this? I don't have an even printed resource cost card in my hand.
Yep.
We'll talk about the other one. I think that is kind of tough for this too, but it's really hard to remember these and also tough to get rid of them.
It's true. All right, we got Discord. So this one you cannot commit cards to skill tests with an odd number of total skill icons on them, and the action to discard is with an even number of total. So same thing, but with skill icons.
Oh, I hate this one.
Let's see. I'm trying to because I feel like a lot of times you're like everything in my hand is odd, or it's like everything in my hand is even and this does nothing, or you're like I don't need to commit things anyway. But
yeah, but it's like your deduction or something in level level 0 only has one icon. I think in a first scenario, most things other than like unexpected courage or perception or something only have one icon. Yeah. It's tough. Maybe it's worse later then because there's more likely to have like 3, but
also will say a lot of assets have like 1 or 2 icons on them, right? And so some of them like I'm trying to remember, but some of them that are just like random, like have 2 different ones, and it's like, okay, I'll just get rid of this asset I don't need to put into play right now or something.
Right. I think the problem with this one though is like, what if your deck just doesn't have, not that many, right? And you have to have it in hand to discard it.
Right.
If you happen to have already thrown out your perceptions or unexpected courages from earlier in the scenario, like, what do you do?
That's true.
I mean, I guess you just don't commit, but
yeah, it's basically like you have the tower in your head.
Yeah.
Which I guess we know is not very good. So.
Yeah. But the tower lets you. No, you can't commit anything. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Get rid of it.
Oof.
All right. And Pandemonium, my absolute favorite one. The first time I read it, you cannot play cards or commit cards to skill tests with an odd number of words in their title. A word is any text separated by spaces. I love that they had to add that because that means that dashes count as being part of a word. And this one discards with the player card even number of words in their title.
Yeah, this one everyone just starts looking at all their cards and counting. Yeah. Like working a hunch. Okay, that one's 3. Oh no.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like there's a couple that like you think doesn't have an article at the beginning, like or the, and you're like, oh, I can discard this, and you're like, no, it actually has it, so it's an odd number, and you're like, no. Which is
I wonder how they balance these. Like, did they actually like go through the card pool and see if like one of these was, because there's no like equivalent the other way, right? It's always
Right.
an even, an even, and an even, right?
Yeah.
Is that harder or easier with
That's
the
a good
card pool?
question. I legitimately don't know. I love that Pandemonium technically might change based on your localization. I just love
Yes,
that.
right.
That's hilarious to me. I honestly want to ask like the Spanish players of this game what they think about this card, if it's like more complicated or not.
Yeah. No,
That's so
please,
good.
please tell us if you have played this game in another language with,
Yeah,
even a different writing system might be interesting.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, ultimately these cards either do nothing or they're extremely annoying.
that's true. Yeah.
All right.
All right, down to the Zoog. So we already talked about the furtive Zoog, but just to go into it, it's 3, 1, and 1. And it spawns engage with the investigator at your location with the lowest combat. And also it has prey, lowest combat. It has retaliate
Very
and swarming one.
rarely they do this, right? With the spawn when you draw the
Indeed.
card with someone else at your location.
Yes. And as a reminder, because it has a spawn keyword, that means that it will literally like if you are the person that drew it, it still technically comes into play and then spawns with you. So if there's a choice and you drew it, you don't have to engage with it if someone else has like the same combat, for example, and has a
Mm-hmm.
choice. Um so yeah, these guys are fine. 1 health is or technically 2 health, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that's fine.
Retaliate is um interesting for these because you're still only fighting one of them. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. That is
So you only
correct.
get hit by one if you fail,
That is true.
and that's gonna be true for the alert one, which is
Yep.
next.
Stealthy Dude 113. It has alert, and all of its stuff is about lowest agility. And still swarming one deals a horror instead. Obviously, I think this one's easier to deal with because you can just kill it faster.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, but it is a nice little mirror, right? Because one is
yep,
alert, one has retaliate, and the stats are flipped.
exactly. All right, we got one copy of the Inconspicuous Zoog. It has 212. It spawns at any connecting location. It has Hunter and Swarming 2. And when it's defeated, you actually cancel all excess damage and move any of its remaining swarm/host cards to a connecting location exhausted. So it's kind of like it has elusive for when it's defeated, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Um,
interesting. I like
yeah,
this
so
one.
maybe this one should be called the elusive Zook.
Mm,
But yeah, effectively, whenever you defeat one of its swarm cards, it just moves away instead of having the rest of the damage be dealt to it. So
and
you're gonna
you
have to
can't
do
split
3
them up,
stuff.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. One thing we forgot to mention is if you do defeat swarm cards, they go to the bottom of your deck.
Correct. They're not. How do the empty space cards work again? Are those
That one
shuffled
I
into
think
your deck?
shuffles into your
Yeah,
deck.
that's right. Kind of annoyed that they behave differently, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things like the empty space from the end of Circle Undone, where you're like, okay, you could just use other cards.
right.
So there's always a little bit of a debate about what happens for swarming if you don't have enough cards left in your deck.
Right.
So let's say you've got one card left and you draw the inconspicuous Zoog. It says swarming 2. Well,
Yep.
or even one of these other ones that asks to add more or something. Well, probably on a literal reading, it fails and you just only get one swarm card. But maybe that probably should shuffle your deck or something. That seems strange. I don't know.
I legitimately have no idea.
Yeah, I think there's a ruling that says that you need to like shuffle your deck and make a new deck and even take a horror from that, which is like makes sense that you're not cheesing the scenario by saying I have nothing left in my deck, or like if you're Norman or something, and you can't, and you have your weakness, so you can't
And
take
you
things
literally
from your
can't do that. Yeah.
yeah, which just makes me say that all of these should just be like take all of your copies of Knife, put them in a sleeve,
Right.
and they are the swarming cards. Like don't take cards from your deck. I just personally don't like taking cards from my deck for the combo problem, but
Sure.
like I don't think the design of this is supposed to be it makes it tougher to find things in your deck. I think it's
Right.
literally just we don't have a other way of getting extra cards that we aren't going to print in the set.
Yeah, speaking on that, I feel like what they could have just done is like track this without cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like they could have tracked this with some kind of counter. Like I know that like maybe just putting resources on them is kind of weird, but I feel like that wouldn't even be too bad. Like, each time that this is defeated, you remove a resource. Each resource counts as its own enemy. I don't know. It is
I
kind of weird
agree.
that the resource would be engaged with you, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's an idea of like it's easier to track that they are actually separate enemies if they're separate
Sure.
cards and they're like copies basically.
Right.
But it's kind of annoying to move around a stack of cards around the table and then you have to figure out sometimes whose cards they are
Yeah, that's
because
true.
they can't go back in your deck if they're not yours. And if you're playing with sleeves, it's no big deal. But if you're not, so yeah, it's like okay, maybe you can. It tells you can look at the cards if you're not sure whose they are.
And then
But
you're
yeah,
like, oh, but each of us have this card in our deck. It could be either
I know we
ours.
all have unexpected courage.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Last card in the set.
Yeah, the Zoog Burrow. So it's a 3 agility test. For each point you failed by, add a swarm card to the nearest swarming Zoog enemy. If you fail, you just find a Zoog and draw it. So it can either add more swarms or just find a Zoog.
Mm-hmm.
Not so bad.
Yep. That's fine. I kind of wish we saw more of the Zoogs in this campaign. One of the weird things about having only 4 scenarios in each is that we don't see the repeated shared encounter sets that often. This one
That
shows
often,
up
yeah.
in the next scenario
At the very beginning.
briefly, really
Yeah.
briefly. Yep.
For like 4 turns and then it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. 4 Zoogs.
Four
These two
Zoogs.
we get a few more times for sure.
Absolutely. So we have Dreamer's Curse and Somnophobia. These are kind of analogs of each other. They each make you test Willpower 5, and for each point you fail by, you either take a damage for Dreamer's Curse or a horror for Somnophobia. So they are kind of Grasping Hands, Rotting Remains analogs.
Mm-hmm.
However, you can only do this to a maximum of 3, so you can't take 5 horror from this, which is nice.
Yeah.
And each of them have, actually, they all have the text that you can commit intellect, combat, and agility icons to these tests, and they count as icons. And willpower and wild icons count as 2 matching icons. So basically, it's a higher difficulty, but you have a better way to actually commit stuff to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're kind of interesting that it's both willpower tests. I get it because you're in the Dreamlands, maybe.
Right.
But usually it's agility for damage and willpower for horror. So they do at least give you an out if you don't have a good willpower score. But
That's true. I also like how, because all the icons count, you can find some unorthodox ways to commit a lot of things where you're like,
mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I'll commit my able-bodied, and that is technically 6 icons on it, for example.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah,
Justin from Playing Board Games told me a funny story where I believe, I don't remember who he was playing, but maybe it was Winifred, and she's got arrogance, I think is her weakness.
Okay.
And it's a wild icon. You're forced to commit it to every test, so it's
right.
-2.
-2. That's pretty funny.
So some weird things happen, indeed.
Right. Or you're like, yeah, that's cool.
Yep. All right.
And we have Deeper Slumber. So you put into play your 3rd area. Your max hand size is reduced by 3 and is checked after each time you draw 1 or more cards.
Gross.
That second clause is definitely the most annoying bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can double action to discard it. So this definitely gets pretty annoying.
Why is this in this set?
Because it's about sleep.
I guess.
I guess.
Is it always paired with the hidden cards? Because that's where it actually makes a bigger difference, right?
I don't think good question. I don't know, but it's definitely it's its own encounter set. But
yeah, it's just like nothing to do with those. So that when you have hidden cards, it's a problem because then you have to get rid of that or you get rid of this, and
I have
lots of actions to throw away.
You're in the Mythos phase. You have this in your 3rd area, and you draw a log of Yiggoroth. Do you have to check your hand size?
Probably not. Most times they say draw 1 or more cards. It's implicitly from your deck.
That's true. That's true.
So I would say no.
I think you're right. I legitimately don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't say after you add cards to your hand, so.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right.
Alrighty. We got some more weird stuff. So we have the Dreamlands Eclipse. You put it into play next to the agenda deck, and whenever you investigate, you either take a horror or your location gets +2 shroud for the investigation, and it only lasts for 1 round. Usually it's fine.
Like a obscuring fog, but not.
Exactly. And this one is the one that has an analog in Scarlet Keys, right? That's like exactly the same. I can't remember. Was it in Scarlet Keys?
Oh, you mean like there's something that gives it Like either you take a damage or something?
No,
or-
there was something that was exactly this card.
Oh, probably. I think I think so.
Yeah. Was it the one? Was it in the scenario that there was eclipse going on? That might have been
I know that
why it
sounds
was
like it
funny.
must be, right? The
Honestly, I can't remember. Yeah.
Dealings in the Dark, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That sounds right, but if we're wrong, it's
Yeah,
been
let
pretty
us know.
obvious. Good way to look it up is because ArkhamDB exists. But yeah, we're just
Definitely.
going on memory. Okay.
Yep.
Prismatic
And we have the
phenomenon.
prismatic phenomenon. Yeah, and to play the third area. Oh yeah, this one's cool. The first time you perform one of the following actions: draw, resource, or play. Each round, it costs an additional action. Or after you successfully investigate a location, instead of discovering clues, discard prismatic phenomenon. So it's kind of this weird analog to Frozen in Fear, where it's like
Yeah.
it doubles up your actions for 3 kinds of things. In this case, it's draw, resource, or play. But in order to get rid of it, you don't have to pass a willpower test. You have to actually get a clue, which is sometimes a lot harder for some people.
And getting a clue by investigating, which is
Right.
even harder.
Right. That is true. Yeah, you have to actually investigate.
Hmm.
This one's interesting because I feel like a lot of the times the draw or resource part of it doesn't really matter, because if you're taking draw actions, then it's kind of whatever.
Yeah. Don't.
But like this can really bone investigators to take a lot of play actions. So
Mhm. Nathaniel.
Nathaniel, Agnes Baker, Parallel Agnes,
Mm-hmm.
all those people.
Right. Hank or Danielle get a hard time getting rid of this. But if you have other people on the team, they could commit cards.
True. Yeah. Or like find a low shroud.
Yep. Are there low shrouds? I think there's.
There was a one shroud somewhere. Right? Yeah, they were there.
Yeah. Okay. If that one's in play, and you get rid of the Gug, then
Yeah.
there you go.
There you go. And then we got our classic Crypt Trail and Obscuring Fog.
Yep.
It's fine. Obscuring Fog, honestly, will whiff most of the time,
Yes.
if I'm honest.
Yeah,
And,
that's the thing with
Crypt
this
Trail's
one
Crypt
is there's not that many clues to get, so initiating investigations probably won't happen that often. You can kind of get around Dreamland's Eclipse by, using your fingerprint kit and just get all the clues at once if you're playing 2-player.
Makes sense.
Or you just take the horror.
Right.
All right.
Alrighty.
That's
our
it.
counter deck. That's it. This scenario is definitely one of the more simpler ones.
Tokens,
Hand-eye
also
shows.
pretty simple because we don't even have an Elder Thing possibility.
That's right. So our skulls, which we only get throughout the scenario, minus X. X is half the number of cards in your hand, rounded up, so that'll go up. Cultists, I think we start with 1 cultist.
One.
Yeah. We have, it is minus X. X is the number of revealed enchanted woods locations, so that will go up as well. And we have the tablet minus 2 if you fail, and this is an attack or visual attack against a swarming enemy. You add a swarm card to it. Honestly, they're pretty fine. The cultists can get technically up to minus 6, but
I think
it's
okay.
usually just fine. Yeah.
Yep. Resolutions.
Yeah, let's do it. So, resolutions, I believe.
I've never failed this one. What happens if you doom out?
Great question.
There's something on the back of the agenda that I've never seen before.
Right. That's right. That is true. If it's Act 1, 2, or 3,
oh no,
they have to account for that. Yeah, you've been stuck on the steps the whole time. So you're defeated, take physical trauma. Each of those investigators may test willpower 3. Each investigator succeeds, defeated, and suffers a mental trauma instead. Whoa. Interesting. I've literally never heard from this.
So you want to get the mental trauma instead. Okay. All right. Fine.
Okay. If it's Act 4, coordinate your campaign like the dreamers straight from the path. What? So technically, you can have yourself stray from the path twice.
Twice? Okay.
That's an achievement. Wow. Okay.
I bet no one ever looked at this in playtesting, so.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea what's going on. Anyway, they're defeating mental trauma, and then I think they're saved by Randolph Carter. It's yeah, you even still get Randolph Carter. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if we do succeed on the back of our act, we have a choice. There is a scene going on between the something.
The Zoogs and the cat.
That's right.
Sorry.
The Zoogs and the cats.
Cats, yeah.
Yeah. And that's right. This actually does matter what choice you make, to a certain extent. your tribute is late. So yeah, you can either step back and just let it play out, or you can interrupt the cat and handle this business yourself. And we get 2 resolutions from that. You can either have the cats collect their tribute from the Zoogs, or I believe we talked with the Zoogs because we like them better, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, so you get to kind of choose a side between the Zoogs and the cats, kind of, which does technically matter, but not too much. And then we get to meet this man, Randolph Carter, who's a dreamer in the Dreamlands who knows a lot of stuff apparently, and he gets to help us out.
Let's take a look at him.
Yeah, so he's going to join our deck. He's a 3-cost asset, which takes up the ally slot, 3 health, 2 sanity. You get +1 combat and +1 agility. That's pretty good. And as a reaction, after a tablet symbol is revealed during a skill test at your location, exhaust him to draw 2 cards. That's fantastic.
I believe you got 2 of them in the bag on this
That is
side,
true.
so that's good.
That is really good. All right,
Also,
and yeah, we have to we're going to Ulthar. That's right. That's where we're going. And because that's right, we're looking for Virgil Gray. That's the whole point of this. And we need to go to Ulthar to look for him.
So this is maybe a good time to talk about the Dream Eaters in general here for it being a split campaign. There's also a lot of story stuff in between the scenarios or in the resolutions or introduction.
Yeah.
I find that with a few exceptions, and one of my negative comments about this scenario is like the narrative is way more than the gameplay, and like all this stuff where you're like, I don't know what happened, I don't remember what the text said here at the end is very apropos like of the whole campaign. Like you don't even meet Randolph in the actual scenario. I think that's kind of a miss.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were talking about like, oh, there's too much reading in Scarlet Keys, and I'm like, did you play Dream Eaters? Because there's like, I feel like there's way more reading in Dream Eaters,
and it's
or maybe not
sort
more,
of consequential. I mean, I think there's a lot, and it's also just like the story itself that you were playing almost feels like an afterthought. Like all this stuff about the Zoogs and the cats at the end is kind of, I don't want to say it's important, but you meet these other characters, and then you're like, okay, I guess we're done with the scenario.
I think for people who were already like really interested in the Dreamlands as like a concept or familiar from the Dreamlands from the original works, I think that this appeals a lot to them. Where like, oh yeah, I know all of these things about like the Zoogs and the cats, and you don't want to talk to the cats for some reason, and all this stuff about the dreamers and stuff. So maybe it appeals more to them. But for someone coming at this without knowing all that stuff, and I'm like, I don't know why we're talking to these Zoogs at this point.
Right. I agree with that, but it also feels like since they had to stuff it all into just 4 scenarios, this is kind of the leftover stuff gets into the interludes or the resolutions, and that feels a little fair. All right, then it also says to earn victory X. We mentioned before that it is a lot of victory for one scenario, potentially 13.
Yes. Theoretically 13.
If you do everything, and that is a lot.
It is a lot.
But given that you only have 3 opportunities to upgrade your decks and 4 scenarios in total, they kind of need to do this.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a good choice, seeing as, it's kind of like you're getting 2 scenarios worth of XP in one, since each there's half as many scenarios. So it makes sense.
Yeah, that you don't end up with quite as many victory points as other campaigns at the end of each of the 2 parts, but
yeah,
it's like in the 20s and mid 20s or so.
Yeah, mid 20s, maybe low 30s, depending on whatever on other things. But I think also it definitely feels like there's a lot because you rarely get this many at once.
Right.
And so you're like, I can finally get my Red Clock 5 that costs 10 XP, and it's like so hard to get that by not spending XP for like 2 or 3 scenarios potentially in other campaigns.
Yeah, and it does feel pretty good to be like, okay, scenario 2, I basically have my deck doing whatever it wants to do, which is cool.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. Any other like thoughts about playing 2 different sets of investigators? Because there is something to be said for that too.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely memorable. I like the fact that for me, who likes building decks, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
I get to basically play 2 separate investigators in this campaign. And so it's cool to have 2 decks go through the campaign just because it's interesting to me to be like, kind of feel like I'm getting twice as much XP because I'm upgrading twice as fast. Um,
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah, and it is also depending on how you play this. It may take a while to, um, I don't know, go back and forth between the two different campaigns, mini campaigns.
Yeah.
You have to, you know, make another chaos bag. So there's a little bit of work that you need to do, but it's not honestly not too bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Any last thoughts before we go on to our rankings, ratings?
I think this scenario is pretty straightforward. I'm down to rate.
All right, let's do it. All right, so as mentioned before, we'd like to do a little bit of a rating on a scale from 1 to 5 about the answers to some of these questions. And the first one is going to be on replayability generally. How different is each playthrough? Is there more to get out of a second or third playthrough? And this entire campaign, I'm sorry to foreshadow, is not very replayable for me.
I am in agreement with that. Especially the dream side. I actually feel like the waking side is like somewhat more replayable sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, but definitely in the dream side, and definitely this first scenario is definitely low on replayability, which is I don't think it's necessarily like a terrible thing, but it is a thing. I think
Hmm.
that the scenario as it is laid out, literally in the beginning, you are on a straight path and you have literally one thing to do. There is literally no variance because there's no encounter deck, um, and so you just got to get to the bottom. Um, I appreciate that story moment is like in the scenario because I think it's cool,
Hmm.
but it definitely is not replayable in that sense.
Yeah, it's interesting that they did this with this campaign of it tells more of this narrative outside of the gameplay. I mentioned that a few minutes ago. Yeah, I mean, you're still playing the game, not saying you're not, but there's a lot more of this move from one location to the next. And as we'll talk about for the third scenario, flipping over cards and reading some story. But it happens in a very predictable manner. So the fact that the act deck in this one really is just like do the next thing, advance, do the next thing, advance, and the next thing is literally moving to the next location, just getting clues.
Yep.
It's a little, I don't want to say boring, but it doesn't have much by way of storytelling in the gameplay. It's really just flip the card and it tells you what happened.
Yeah, and to kind of slightly branch off that, I think that once again when we talk about replayability, we're talking about multiple playthroughs of this. I think that because it is very focused on telling a specific story, the blind playthrough of this scenario is really really cool because you're
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
legitimately going through like really cool things going on. You're like, what is happening? Like we're talking to this Nosh and Kamata guy, and then you get to the forest, and you're like, we can start looking around, and so unlike the blind playthrough, I think it's fantastic. But
it
as we
is.
said, there's a rating for replayability. It's not the best.
Hmm. And I'll echo what you said at the beginning. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it only becomes more magnified in the fact that the entire campaign is kind of this way.
That's true.
There's strangely not even any, correct me if I'm wrong, like choices in the campaign to make as far as like following different story paths.
With one exception, maybe, but that happens in the interludes, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But as far as like siding with Ichitaka or Alejandro, right? There's nothing that's kind of like that.
Exactly.
All right.
All right. With that in mind, I think I'll put it at a 2. I don't think it's a 1 because I think that there are some variants at the bottom when it's like, where is the Gug gonna be? I think that's a big one, and what missing location we'll have, I think, is also a big one. But yeah, it's definitely on the lower end.
I agree. Yeah, this is like I said before, one of the few times you get maybe a random location that goes in, and it is true that you don't know what's going to be on the other side of the Enchanted Woods locations, which is not true of a lot of the rest of the scenarios in this campaign, where you
True.
basically know what everything is going to be already.
Yep.
Okay, fairness. So this
Ooh.
time we like to ask questions about are there interesting decisions that you have to make? And when you make those decisions, is it kind of on your end, or is it dictated by the randomness of the card game and token pulls, that kind of thing?
Yep. Well, I think that if anything, this definitely has the least amount of randomness of a lot of scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I think that I like the idea of descending down the stairs being a good time pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that amount of pressure. I do feel like I generally have too much time. But maybe that's just because I'm able to get through the beginning really fast. And so it kind of doubles up your time at the bottom if you're able to get through it fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like how often do you usually get to the bottom? How fast do you think? I feel like I can get it in like either 3 or 4 rounds, if anything. But
Yeah, that sounds about right. So there's 19 rounds in total. I honestly don't know what the number is, but
yeah,
to get there. But usually, as long as you know that you don't need to just play all your assets or something, because
yeah,
really the doom pressure is worse than one action to play something.
yeah,
You just go. As long as someone can get clues without having to play a bunch of stuff, then it goes pretty smoothly. If you're playing like a Mystic or something, it might be tough.
true. Yeah. So with that in mind, I feel like I'm not really dragging myself one way or the other. Like it feels fine, but also it feels like a little just uh not not enough pressure, I guess. But
Mhm.
I don't know. It's the first scenario. I think I'm just gonna give it a 3, like in the middle.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna do that too. I almost feel like this is like an NA because,
Right.
when we kind of envisioned this rating scale, it's like fair or unfair, and it's almost like, as you said, there's not very much to speak of here. So it's like a low rating. Does that mean it was unfair? No, it kind of means that there wasn't enough to talk about.
Right.
So 3, I think, makes sense for that.
Yep.
All right, we have balance, and this is talking about the kind of the player's end, right? Like, are you able to do whatever you kind of want to do with your decks, or uh, does the scenario really favor you doing one kind of thing to the detriment of someone who wanted to play a certain kind of deck?
Right. Um. Well, I mean, obviously in the beginning we were like, where are all my cards going? Can be a little unfortunate, but I'm like, whatever.
The quicker
Um.
you go, though, the less that matters.
That's true. Albeit, yeah, that is true because then you could kind of like refill your hand at the bottom.
So you're not getting
Um.
rid of cards from upkeep as many times.
That's true. Um. And I mean, I don't know. You were talking about the law of Yigoroths being a little annoying. I feel like I'm usually fine with them, but maybe I'm just lucky. I don't know. What are your experiences with it?
I mean, I think it's annoying, but not in a way that is like you should have planned better or something. I
Right.
just think it's an odd card. Ha, it is an odd card.
There you go.
Yeah, it's fine. Like I usually forget about it if I'm building my deck. I'm not like looking
Hmm.
through and saying, do I have enough, even stuff in my deck. Like you could play a dumb Jeremiah Kirby deck where everything costs 0 or 2 and you never worry about it. But
Right.
at some point you kind of want to get rid of the card in your hand too.
Yeah, that's fair.
Imagine if you're
Um,
Patrice, right?
that's hilarious.
Anyway,
Uh,
I don't think this is a campaign that particularly rattles me one way or another on balance. In this
no, yeah,
one,
me neither.
they give you the parlay abilities for basically every stat, so
Yeah,
just pass a test.
pass the test. Yeah, I mean, and also, and at the bottom, you're kind of just going around getting clues, so it's kind of just classic Arkham.
Hmm.
I don't know. Does that make it a 5? What does that make it a 5?
Yes, like what are the other pressure points? Like the problem is like this scenario doesn't have that many pressure points.
Right. So with
Uh,
that in mind, it's really balanced because the field of it being balanced is very wide,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
I'm gonna have a 5.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. Yeah. Okay, I'm with you.
I
I
know
mean,
I need you to disagree with me.
no, I mean, maybe we can disagree on the next one. Although,
Okay.
so the experience. Oh, so yeah, there's like two things going on here, right? Like
Yeah.
the fiction that it's trying to evoke is
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Like
I
it
think
is
that
telling you a story.
there are a lot of really thematic elements of this scenario. I love the fact that you have to shed your hand in order to get deeper into the dreamlands because it's like
Hmm.
you're getting ready your, I don't know, corporeal thoughts perhaps.
Sure.
Um, and adding the skulls to make you go deeper and deeper as you go deeper and deeper is like really thematic way to represent that. But I think you're right. Like it has those aspects where it is really good at setting a mood, but the story that it needs to tell is after the scenario ends. Um, so it is very interesting in that respect, where it like succeeds in the mood setting, but not so much the storytelling.
Right. Yeah, because how much of your time is spent just wandering around the enchanted woods, getting clues? Like, what exactly happens when you, like, why are you supposed to spend 5 per clues at the end? Like, what is that supposed to represent? Did you find
I,
something?
you found the cats, I guess.
Okay,
Yeah,
but maybe so. It just doesn't seem like, why would you want to? I mean, like, maybe just the time that you took wandering around. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
So that's that. And then for the first question here about like, is there a new and interesting gameplay loop? Like, how is the experience itself of playing the game? There is this like kind of novel. There's no encounter deck. You are just doing things with your cards to pass tests, and you're getting down to the bottom of the steps. That's new. You mentioned at the beginning like you want them to return to this a little bit more. Do you want to talk about that a little more?
Oh no, I just brought it up. I was like, it'd be fun if they didn't have encounter decks.
Yeah.
Which, as you said, they do that for the preludes of Hemlock
Hmm.
Vale.
It actually makes a lot
And
of sense there, right?
yeah, it does. Since they're in the village.
Hmm.
And now that you mentioned it, because I didn't realize it, but it's like it very much feels like these first three acts are kind of like a prelude to this scenario where you're just doing a specific thing out of danger and maybe just looking around for story stuff.
True.
Um, but while Hemlock Vale is very open ended in his preludes, this one is very linear, very extremely
Yeah.
linear.
Man, I'm not going to say like you should skip the first 3 acts when you play this, but it almost feels like the beginning of Circle Undone, where it's like, okay, how do I not do
Yeah.
this? I should
But
also
again, I think
mention.
it's mood setting. Like a lot
Mhm.
of it is very much like you're entering the dreamlands. What does that actually feel like? And I feel like a lot of people, if they maybe move that into story text, would have complained to be like, "There's so much reading. I'm just reading about the dreamlands. I didn't actually get to experience it, for example."
Agreed.
But
Yeah.
it could have gone either way. I think.
Yeah. That's fair. I'll just kind of return to maybe there's just too much here for a scenario campaign, but that's what we got. And speaking of, there is no return to. This is it.
This is it.
They might have changed some of these things in the return to, added something. I don't know. Who knows? There was apparently some plan that MJ had for return to, but we'll probably not see that ever,
Yeah.
or not for a while. I don't know.
Can she just tell us, and we can just make it ourselves?
Right? There might be a
That'd be fun.
fan created Return to Dream Eaters like there is for
That's true.
Infinite at this moment, but
Yeah.
it's a little sad. But I mean, we are going to be ending our video here because there is
Yeah.
there's no more this time.
There's no more. And on that final note, I'm going to give it a 4 because I actually think that it does a really good job of setting the scene. And as you said, the story it feels kind of separate from the scenario itself, but I think I like the amount of interesting stuff that goes on at least in this first scenario. I think that the more linear nature of the scenario of these scenarios kind of gets more and more not as good in the later scenarios of this part of the campaign.
Hmm.
But for this first one, I really do like it.
I was going to give it a 4.
Okay. Dang it.
I know. Maybe I'm going to give it a 3.5 now instead.
Okay. Good.
Let's do it. I'm a little bit more like about did it establish the fiction enough? It certainly did a lot, though. I mean, it's hard to knock it down too far, but I mean, 3.5 is a very good rating for experience. There's certainly been ones where we have given it a lower rating. So, that is the first scenario of the Dream Eaters.
This episode feels so much shorter.
It's weird. It's weird to end it on the rankings here. So we will see you next week, I suppose, for the other side where there is a spider infestation in the hospital. I'm looking forward to talking about that one because I think it's kind of a more interesting one to talk about.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.